Welcome to Heartbreaker, your love radio.
Robert and Elaine sat on the old wooden bench in the city park, the one that had witnessed so many of their shared secrets and whispered dreams under the Midwest stars. Autumn tinged the leaves with fiery colors, a constant reminder that nothing stays the same. "Elaine, I need to do this," said Robert, his voice filled with determination and a hint of anxiety. "A New York, it might give me what this city can't. I have to try." Elaine looked at him, her blue eyes clouded with the pain she tried to hide. "I understand, Robert, but what about us? Can you really leave me behind? What we have is real and tangible. Isn't it enough?" Robert took her hands in his, feeling the warmth and gentle tremble of her palms. "You are more than enough, Elaine. But there's this hunger inside me, this need to see how far I can go. I wouldn't be complete if I didn't try. You understand that, don't you?" Elaine withdrew her hand slowly, gazing out at the lake where golden reflections of the afternoon danced on the surface. I understand," she murmured. "But I fear that in pursuing your dreams, you might forget what you leave behind." I could never forget you," Robert asserted, his heart heavy with the weight of his words. Let's make a plan. I'll go to New York, try to build something, and if everything works out, you'll come after. It doesn't have to be a definitive goodbye, just to see you later." Elaine smiled sadly, stroking Robert's face with a tenderness that spoke of love and resignation. What if you find someone who shares your dreams in the big city? What if I become just a distant memory? A nothing and no one could replace you, Elaine. You'll always be my home." Robert tried to infuse as much certainty as he could into his words, even knowing that the future was a blank page. With one final hug, filled with the warmth of countless summers spent together, they rose from the bench. Robert carried the promise of a new life, and Elaine, the weight of an uncertain heart. The sun set slowly, casting long shadows over the path. They now began to walk separately, each facing the unknown with hearts intertwined, yet broken. New York throbbed with an energy that seemed to feed Robert's soul. The skyline, a silhouette of promises against the night sky, was now within reach of his hands. In no time, Robert found his place in the frantic rhythm of the metropolis, a city of limitless opportunities. It was in an art gallery in Manhattan that he met Sophia, a woman with a smile as captivating as her sharp mind. She was a writer and an art critic, always involved in a whirlwind of social events and book launches. Sophia stood near one of the central pieces, a bold canvas capturing a whirlwind of colors in motion. Her gaze was fixed, the analysis deep and thoughtful. Robert approached, drawn not only to the art but to her magnetic presence. "Do you think the artist captured chaos or control here?" Robert asked, initiating the conversation with a question he hoped would be intellectually stimulating. Sophia turned to him, a spark of interest in her eyes. It's a dance between the two, don't you think? Chaos in its purest form, yet meticulously controlled by the artist's brush. It's a fascinating paradox." She offered him a smile, encouraging him to continue. "That's exactly what draws me to New York. Everything seems a bit chaotic, but there's a sense of control, of purpose, behind it all. It makes every day a discovery," Robert shared, his enthusiasm for the city evident in his tone. Sophia tilted her head, assessing him with a growing smile. "You're new here, aren't you? I can tell by the way you still look at the city with a mix of admiration and curiosity." "Yes, I recently moved. I'm trying to absorb everything I can." "And you? Have you been living here for long?" Robert asked, hoping to extend the conversation. Practically all my life. But you see, that's what I love about New York. Even as a veteran, every day offers me something new. Like art," Sophia said, gesturing towards the artworks around them. "Each piece can change your world, depending on how you see it." Robert nodded, impressed by her insight. So, do you think art reflects the city, or does the city reflect art? Sophia laughed again, that sound he was already beginning to adore. Perhaps both. Artists and cities are creators and creatures of the environment that surrounds them. They influence and are influenced. Like us, isn't it? The connection between them was instant and deep. By the time night fell, they exchanged numbers, promising to repeat the night of conversation and discovery. After their initial meeting at the gallery, Robert and Sophia quickly discovered that they shared not only a love for the arts, but also a deeply aligned worldview. As they explored together the museums, hidden cafes, and parks of New York, the city began to transform into a map of their shared memories. One afternoon, while walking along the snow-covered trails of Central Park, Sophia stopped to watch the ice skaters. She began, hesitantly, I never thought I would find someone who understood me so well, and so quickly. Robert, holding her hand, felt the same. Me too, Sophia. There's something about us. Something that feels destined. The months flew by, and with spring came an impulsive decision. Sitting in a small bistro overlooking the Hudson River, Robert looked at Sophia with a determined sparkle in his eyes. Marry me, he proposed, half jokingly, half seriously, his heart pounding with anticipation. Sophia, surprised, let out an incredulous laugh. Are you serious? We've only known each other for, 6 months? I know it's crazy, Robert admitted, but every time I think about the future, I only see myself with you. And that's enough for me. The look he gave her was so sincere that Sophia felt all her hesitations begin to melt away. Yes, she finally replied, her smile lighting up the space between them. Yes, let's do it. Let's get married. And so, in less than a year since they met, Robert and Sophia exchanged vows in a simple and touching ceremony in Central Park, a green oasis in the heart of the city that never sleeps. They were surrounded only by a few close friends and family members, all amazed at the speed and depth of the couple's commitment. Married life brought new challenges and joys. Soon, the family grew with the arrival of 3 children, each bringing a new layer of chaos and happiness to the couple's life. The days were long, but the nights, shared in comfortable silence or whispered conversations, strengthened the bond they had. One night, while the children slept soundly and they enjoyed a rare quiet moment, Sophia reflected on the twists and turns life had taken. Have you ever regretted coming to New York? Leaving everything behind? Holding her hand, Robert smiled, confident in his answer. Every choice I made has brought me here, with you, with our children. New York has given me everything I dreamed of, and more. Robert's response reassured Sophia, and she nestled closer to him. Together, they would face whatever came their way, certain that as long as they shared the same path, they could navigate any storm. And while the city around them continued its eternal buzz, within that home, there was a safe harbor of love and understanding. It was a typical rainy spring afternoon in New York when fate decided to test Robert. Seeking shelter from the pouring rain, he stepped into a small cafe on the corner of Broadway and 3rd. As he waited for his coffee, his distracted gaze caught a familiar figure across the street, under a red umbrella. It was Elaine. His heart stopped. Everything around him seemed to slow down as he watched her cross the street, as real and unexpected as a living memory. As soon as she entered the cafe, their eyes met. The mutual surprise was almost palpable. Elaine. Robert stammered, his voice blending with the sound of raindrops hitting the windows. Robert. I can't believe it. Is it really you? Elaine replied, with a smile that hid layers of unspoken emotions. They approached each other cautiously, and Robert invited Elaine to sit with him. The casual reunion quickly gave way to deep conversations, as if they were trying to reclaim lost time in just a few moments. How did you end up in New York? Robert asked, his curiosity mingling with the old familiarity. Elaine gave a melancholic smile. Life, I suppose. I moved on, like you did. But tell me, how have you been? You seem well. Yes, life here has been good. I have a family now, 3 children. The hesitation in his voice was evident, even as he spoke of his happiness. Elaine nodded, her gaze drifting for a moment. That's wonderful, Robert. I always knew you would make an amazing life here. The conversation flowed naturally, and before they realized it, hours had passed. As they said their goodbyes, Elaine suggested, perhaps we could meet again, just to talk, like old friends? Robert agreed, his heart heavy and confused. I would really like that, Elaine. In the following months, they met several times. Each encounter revived emotions that Robert thought he had left behind. The feelings he believed were securely buried began to resurface, intense and demanding. On a particularly cold night, as they walked through Central Park, Elaine stopped and looked at Robert intently. Do you still think about what we left behind, Robert? About our could have been? Robert, overcome by emotion and her closeness, confessed more than he intended.
Elaine.
More than I should. Being with you again, it has stirred something in me that I can't simply ignore. Elaine briefly held his hand, a simple gesture, but laden with meaning. I feel it too, Robert. And I don't know what to do with these feelings. And so, amidst clandestine meetings and whispered confessions, Robert's past and present began to collide, leading him to question the certainties of his constructed life. The meetings became more frequent and intense, and they decided to rent a small secret apartment, a refuge away from prying eyes, where they could explore the rekindled passion without the shadows of their separate lives. The first time they entered the apartment together, Elaine looked around, the space still echoing with the silence of a newly discovered place. It feels surreal, don't you think? Having our own space, even if only for stolen moments, she remarked, as she ran her fingers over the kitchen's marble countertop. Robert, closing the door behind him, nodded in agreement, his feelings a whirlwind of excitement and apprehension. Yes, surreal. But also, right. Being here with you, it feels like we're reclaiming lost time. Elaine smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Yes, reclaiming lost time. She murmured, her voice almost inaudible. In the following months, the apartment became the setting for their encounters. Each room told stories of shared laughter, whispered secrets, and moments of intimacy. During one of these encounters, as they watched the sunset through the living room window, Elaine lying on the couch with her head resting on Robert's lap, she broke the comfortable silence they had found. Have you thought about what we're doing, Robert? She asked, her tone soft but laden with meaning. Robert absent-mindedly played with Elaine's hair, his expression becoming serious. I think about it all the time. About what this means for us. For me and my family. Elaine sat up, facing him directly. And what have you concluded? What do we really want from this?
I don't know, Robert admitted, his honesty hanging heavy in the air between them. But I do know that what I feel for you is something I can't ignore. Something that makes me question everything I thought I knew about my life. Elaine held his hand, a gesture of connection and perhaps of solace. I feel that too, Robert. Every moment here with you is a reminder of what we could have had, of what we still could have. Robert sighed, a sound laden with desire and doubt. I just hope that, in the end, this leads us to a place where we can both be happy. Whether together or not. Robert's words hung in the air, an admission of the complexities and potential pains that their relationship could bring. Robert's decision didn't come easy. Sleepless nights and long solitary walks through the streets of New York preceded the moment when he knew he needed to face the reality he had created. The image of Sophia and their children playing in the park crossed his mind with every step he took, but the memory of Elaine and what they had shared and lost years ago weighed even heavier. Finally, on a cold night, Robert sat with Sophia in their living room, the lights dimmed and the children already in bed. He held her hands, looking into her eyes, filled with the trust and love that had always embraced him. Sophia, there's something I need to tell you, something that has been consuming me from within," Robert began, his voice trembling. Sophia, sensing the seriousness of the moment, squeezed his hands. What's going on, Robert? You can tell me anything. I've reconnected with someone from my past. Someone very important to me. We've started seeing each other again," Robert confessed, his heart tightening with every word. Sophia recoiled, releasing his hands, an expression of pain and surprise crossing her face. What are you saying, Robert? Who is this person? It's Elaine, my ex-girlfriend. The truth is, I still have feelings for her. Feelings I've tried to ignore, but I can't anymore, Robert explained, struggling against the guilt flooding him. Seriously? And what does that mean for us, for our family? Sophia's voice trembled, mixing disbelief with the anguish of perceived betrayal. I don't know, Sophia. I just know I need to explore these feelings to understand what they really mean. I don't want to live a lie or hurt you any more than I'm hurting right now, Robert said, the words becoming increasingly difficult to say. So, you're leaving us for her? Sophia asked, a tear escaping, tracing a sad path down her face. Robert, heartbroken to see the suffering he had caused, nodded silently. I need to do this. Please try to understand. It's not about what you did or didn't do. It's something I need to figure out for myself. The conversation stretched into the night, amid tears and pleas, but Robert's decision was made. The next morning, he left home with a suitcase and a heart full of doubts, leaving behind a shattered family and a wife still trying to comprehend the ruins of their marriage. As he walked towards the uncertain new beginning with Elaine, Robert couldn't help but wonder if his choice would lead him to the true love he so desperately craved, or if it would be just a hasty step towards an illusory happiness. Dawn had not yet broken when Robert met Elaine in the small apartment they had rented for their encounters. He hoped to start a new life with her, but the look Elaine gave him as she opened the door carried a coldness he had never seen before. Elaine, I'm here," Robert began, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and nervousness. I'm ready to start something new, something real this time. Elaine ushered him inside with a silent nod, closing the door behind her with a definitive click. The dim light from the lamp cast long shadows over her face, giving her an almost enigmatic air. Robert, before you say anything else, there's something I need you to know," Elaine paused, as if weighing the impact of her next words. I don't want to rebuild anything with you. Robert's heart stopped. What are you saying? Yesterday everything seemed. We were planning. Planning? Elaine interrupted with a cold smile. No, Robert. You were planning. I was concluding something. I needed you to feel a fraction of the pain I felt when you left me, when you chose your ambition over me. Robert recoiled as if physically struck. This was all revenge? All this time? Yes. Elaine's voice was calm, but her words sliced through the air with icy clarity. You needed to know what it's like to lose everything for something you thought you wanted. To be left behind. Elaine, I left my family for you, Robert stammered, desolation seeping through every word. I know. And I let you go, she replied. And now you might understand how I felt. Maybe it will teach you not to play with people's hearts like they're pieces on a board. With that, Elaine walked to the door, opening it and looking outside, into the light filtering through the empty streets of the early morning. You should go now, Robert. And don't come back. The finality in her voice was unquestionable. After Elaine's painful revelation, Robert found himself wandering aimlessly through the cold streets of New York, his heart as heavy as the gray skies above. Unsure where to go or who to talk to, he ended up stepping into a small hotel in the Lower East Side, the kind of place that promised anonymity and temporary oblivion. He spent a restless night, tossing and turning in the uncomfortable bed, as the reality of his choices hit him repeatedly. Come morning, exhausted yet determined, he knew what he needed to do. Robert needed to try to make things right with Sophia, even if hope seemed like a faint, flickering flame. After a hurried and nervous breakfast at the hotel, Robert hailed a taxi to the apartment he had called home. Standing outside the door, his heart pounded so loudly he could almost hear it. He took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Sophia answered the door, her face a mask of caution and resentment. Upon seeing him, her features hardened even further. Robert," she said coldly. What are you doing here?" Sophia, Robert began, stumbling over his words. I need to talk to you. Please." Sophia crossed her arms, remaining in the doorway. "You have 5 minutes. Speak." Facing the woman whose life he had shattered, Robert swallowed the lump in his throat. "I made a terrible mistake, Sophia. I was a fool, and now I see that. Everything that happened with Elaine, it was a lie. She used me to get revenge. I miss you so much and the kids. I would give anything to change what I did." Sophia remained impassive, Robert's words seeming to do little to soften the bitterness in her eyes. "Did you think of us, of your family, when you decided to chase this fantasy, Robert? You abandoned us, not just me, but your children too." Sophia, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for a chance to make things right," Robert continued, hopelessness tinging his voice. Sophia sighed, sadness momentarily overcoming anger. Robert, what you've done can't be undone just because you're sorry. I can't. I don't want to see you right now. I need to take care of myself, of our children. They're my priority. Please, Sophia," Robert whispered, one last plea. "I need you to go, Robert. Please, don't make this any harder than it already is," Sophia said, her voice firm, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. With a sad nod, Sophia closed the door slowly, leaving Robert alone in the hallway, the sound of the final click of the lock echoing like a final echo of his former home. He walked away, each step heavier than the last, his mind swirling with the reality that some doors, once closed, might never reopen. The following days were a blur of desolation for Robert. The streets of New York, once vibrant and welcoming, now seemed indifferent and cold. He often found himself walking aimlessly, lost in bitter reflections on the choices he had made. On a particularly gray afternoon, Robert found himself in the same cafe where he had seen Elaine for the first time in so many years. Sitting alone at a table in the back, he watched the people around him, each absorbed in their own lives, oblivious to the weight he carried. A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Mark, an old friend he hadn't seen in months. Robert? Man, you look terrible. Mind if I join you? Mark asked, already pulling up a chair before waiting for the answer. Sure, Mark, murmured Robert, forcing a half-smile. Mark studied Robert's face for a moment before speaking. What happened, buddy? You disappeared after. Well, you know. Robert sighed, the sound heavy with resignation and pain. I made terrible choices, Mark. I abandoned my family for a ghost from the past, and now, I'm alone. I've lost everything. Mark shook his head, his expression serious. That's tough, Robert. But you know, sometimes we need to face the consequences of our actions to truly understand their impact. What are you going to do now? I don't know, admitted Robert, looking down at his empty hands. I wish I could turn back time, fix things with Sophia and my kids. But some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. I learned that the hard way. Mark put his hand on Robert's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. Maybe you can't rebuild the old bridges, but who knows, maybe you can build new ones. It's not the end, Robert. It's just a new beginning, maybe more humble, but still a beginning. Robert nodded slowly, Mark's words bringing him a little comfort. Maybe you're right. Maybe I can find some form of redemption somehow. The rest of the afternoon passed in deep conversations, with Robert listening to Mark's advice and stories. When they parted ways, Robert felt a little less lost. He knew the road ahead would be tough and lonely, but he also understood that each step would be an opportunity to learn, grow, and maybe one day find peace.